nonviolence is a powerful and just weapon. It is a weapon unique in history which cuts without wounding and ennobles the man who wields it. Nonviolence, thus, as a philosophy, has activist leanings. For believers in it, see it as a means of achieving social change without the use of violence, yet see nonviolent action as an alternative to the passive acceptance of oppression or armed struggle. Grace and peace to you. I wish to talk about nonviolence. Nonviolence, Mahatma Gandhi says, is a weapon of the strong. Almost everywhere in the world today, there is untold violence. If it is not expressed through wars, it is portrayed through animosity in the home or through serial killing of men by fellow men. At times, civilians find themselves hemmed in by armed men in uniform who should protect rather than crush them, pouring bullets at the innocent, unarmed fellows, yet mankind desires happiness and peace, and even those who fight and kill know they are doing it because they want peace, they want happiness. The world today is flooded by countries in war. Countries are loggerheads, civil wars, tribal wars, intertribal wars, and all kinds of things going on in the name of seeking peace, seeking solutions, and resolving the problems and the difficulties that they have. And all of these are because mankind has not realized the power that is contained in nonviolence. And Martin Luther King Jr. is of the opinion that nonviolence is a powerful and just weapon. Indeed, he says, it is a weapon unique in history which cuts without wounding and ennobles the man who wields it. It's a powerful weapon. And there are many in families, institutions in the world who live in a situation of oppression or slavery. They seek means of liberation, and at times emancipation is sought through violence, which most often than not leaves the victim in depression and devastated. Martin Luther King, addressing his fellow workers along the path to freedom, was clear to them that we must never and we must forever conduct our struggle. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Nonviolence is one of the great tools oppressed people have used in history, peacefully obtaining their peace from their slave drivers, yet having peace and love reign supreme when the deal is done. Because when mankind engages in violence as a means to gain freedom, to gain peace, the only thing they have to show forth is the rubble and the ruins of their civilization. As victims of the unjust state of oppression, the tortured will often find themselves battered by pain and anger, but it must be mastered. If not, the oppressed is doubly victimized from the outside forces of violence and the forces from within by his own emotions or passions of hatred. In fact, Cornelia Maud Spellman, in a write-up, "When I feel angry," says, "When I feel angry, I want to say something mean or yell or hit, but feeling like I want to is not the same as doing it. Feeling can't hurt anyone or get me into trouble, but doing can." This is to say, nonviolence, even when I feel really bad, is a possible reaction, and it is a choice, because it is a choice for me to react violently, so I can also make the choice or take the decision to react in a non-violent way. The word non-violence is derived from the Sanskrit ahimsa, which literally means lack of the desire to harm or to kill. Non-violence, therefore, is a practice of being harmless to oneself and to others in every, not some, in every circumstance. The non-violence principle is based on the belief that hurting people, animals, or the environment is not necessary in the process of achieving any outcome, and so preaches the abstention from violence based on moral, religious, and spiritual principles. And this is exactly what Jesus himself taught. Nonviolence was first championed by Mahavira of the Jain religion, who introduced it to the world and lived it out himself. Nonviolence, thus, as a philosophy, has activist leanings. For believers in it, see it as a means of achieving social change without the use of violence, yet see nonviolent action as an alternative to the passive acceptance of oppression or armed struggle. Historically, believers in nonviolence have used it in various ways through education and persuasion, non-cooperation, civil disobedience, in order to get what they wanted, freedom, and of course peace, and to gain the recognition of their somebodyness, like in the case of the American civil rights movement. In the recent past, the use of nonviolent methods has been very effective as a tool for social change. Mahatma Gandhi used it against the British rule in India. Martin Luther King Jr. in his campaigns to win civil rights for African Americans. Cesar Chavez used it to protest the treatment of farm workers in California, and many others. And many groups are using it in the world over to gain independence, to gain freedom, to gain peace from political oppression and all kinds of oppression that they seem to suffer. In the American political drama, Rosa Parks sparked a flame which has burned brightly and could not be put out. The United States Congress called her the First Lady of Civil Rights and the mother of the freedom movement. Parks refused to obey the bus driver, James Blake's order to give up her seat in the colored section to a white passenger after the white section was filled. She is believed to have been the best candidate for seeing through a court challenge after her arrest for civil disobedience in violating Alabama segregation laws. Her defiance and the Montgomery bus boycott became significant strides in the civil rights movement and resistance to racial segregation, using non-violent means to secure their hoped-for goal of equality. Many thought it a foolish venture, but there was optimistic Martin Luther King Jr., who, following from Mahatma Gandhi, used non-violence in the light of the spark ignited by Rosa Parks to bring about the liberation of the African Americans from the dungeon of white domination. He developed the non-violent philosophy into 6 core articles or principles which are indispensable for obtaining peace in the world today, and which seem to be very Christian in their meaning and application. The Lutheran principles are the following. First, non-violence is not a method for cowards. Non-violence is not a method for cowards. In its understanding, if one uses this method because he is afraid or merely because he lacks the instruments of violence, he is not truly non-violent. It is for this reason that in the application of non-violence, Gandhi was clear that if cowardice is the only alternative to violence, it is better to fight. This is because one does not need to submit to another wrong, or neither do they need to use violence to right that wrong. The real means is non-violent resistance. In her autobiography, My Story, Rosa Parks recounts, with regard to her denial to offer up her seat, that people always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired. But that isn't true. I was not tired physically, or no more tired than I usually was at the end of the working day. I was not old, although some people have an image of me as being old then. I was 42. No, the only tired I was I was tired of giving in. So she was able to stand up to the bus driver because she believed there was something in her. She believed in her somebodyness, and she stood for what she thought was the right thing. Jesus teaches us the non-violent method when she says, when somebody strikes you on one jaw, turn the other. Or when somebody says, asks you to walk, go a mile with half a mile or so, go even double. And when somebody asks for your shirt, give him your tunic, which simply means Jesus teaching us the method of being non-violent, seeking peace in a non-violent manner, and doing what we ought to do to gain freedom, but then doing it in peace as Christians. And we must be able in our daily lives live out non-violently, not because we are cowards, not because we cannot fight, but because we choose the path that leads to peace, and a peace that engenders further peace, both in our own lives and in the lives of the people whom we think we need our peace or freedom from. The second article of about non-violence philosophy of Martin Luther is, it does not seek to defeat or humiliate the opponent, but to win his friendship and understanding. Violence always leaves those involved in it in bitterness, while non-violence seeks reconciliation and brotherliness. The use of boycotts, etc., are not ends in themselves, but merely a means to an end. It seeks to win the understanding of the other, which simply means war is not important in human life because it destroys life and it creates enmity, it engenders hatred, whereas non-violence brings the opponent to understanding. And if this can be used within the family, if this can be used in our personal relationships, then it builds a great society, a better society, where we not only fight and kill and wound and maim others, but we are able, as brothers and sisters, living together to come to understanding of our own selves, our differences, and we come to a table where we can be able to share our differences and seek a way forward. Thirdly, the attack is directed against the forces of evil, not persons caught in those forces. In the struggle to build and to live non-violently, and even when we fight non-violently, it is not directed at the persons, but at the forces that are beneath the actions and the circumstances that prevail in which we find ourselves. This method aims at defeating evil and not persons held captive by evil. And that is why the monk Thomas Merton understood this very well. And that is why on non-violence he was able to reflect profoundly, and in his understanding in the use of force, one simplifies the situation by assuming that the evil to be overcome is clear-cut, definite, and irreversible. Hence, there remains but one thing to eliminate it. Any dialogue with the sinner and question of the irreversibility of his act only means faltering and failure. Failure to eliminate evil is in itself a defeat. Anything that even remotely risks such defeat is in itself a kind of capitulation to evil. The irreversibility of evil, according to Thomas Merton, then reaches out to contaminate even the tolerant thought of the hesitant crusader, who momentarily doubts the total evil of the enemy he is about to eliminate. Now, these are very strong words which express the fact that when I fail to see the fact that I'm fighting against an evil and not against persons, then I want to eliminate not only the evil but also the persons involved. But I must seek to come to terms with the fact that I may differ with people, but I hate the sin, but I must love the sinner. I hate the wrongdoing, but I must seek to love the person who does the wrong. We cannot, as it were, seek to eliminate people with their acts. We try to bring them to conversion of heart, conversion of life, conversion of mind, but we cannot seek to eliminate them with their actions. Because somebody did something which was wrong, I cannot seek to eliminate that person for simply doing something which was wrong. This is why Martin Luther King admonished his fellow Negroes. The tension in this city is not between white people and Negro. The tension is at bottom between justice and injustice, between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. And if there is a victory, it will be a victory not merely for 50,000 Negroes in America at the time, but a victory for justice and the forces of light. We are out to defeat injustice and not white persons who may be unjust. There are so many people engaged in the fight for freedom and liberation from oppressive slave drivers. They fight their slave masters, not realizing that the real fight is contained in liberating their masters from looking at them as slaves, through helping them to see that all men are brothers rather than taking up arms. And if mankind could come to this realization, then the nonviolent resistance and the method and philosophy reigning will bring about a new world order where mankind will drop arms and pick up soul force to be able to meet, to be able to face one another, to discuss the challenges, to be able to come to meaningful resolution of difficulties and conflicts and the strives that exist between nations, between people, in the families, and between individuals. The fourth article of the non-violent resistance philosophy is, it is willing to accept suffering without retaliation, to accept blows from the opponent without striking back. And this seems, and it is, what Jesus teaches his disciples and Christians living in the world today, that we must be able to turn the other cheek. Gandhi in his fight in India was explicit, and he says, rivers of blood may have to flow before we gain our freedom, but it must be our blood, not the blood of the oppressor. The non-violent are people who are ready to accept violence, but never ready to inflict it on anyone. The conviction of the non-violent resistor in turning the other cheek is based on the fact that unearned suffering is redemptive. Suffering has a great educational and transformative possibility. Mahatma Gandhi, again, was convinced that things of fundamental importance to people are not secured by reason alone, but have to be purchased with their suffering, with their life's blood at times, with giving up and sacrificing a lot of their own freedoms and a lot of other things in order to achieve these things. But it must never be achieved through them becoming violent, through reacting violently against or towards other people. Suffering is infinitely more powerful than the law of the jungle for converting the opponent and opening his ears, which are otherwise shut to the voice of reason. Gandhi says, many have shed their blood in history, but each time blood is shed, it is like that of the martyrs, which Tertullian says is the seed of Christianity. It pleads the cause of justice. Spiritually, the dead have their way of fighting for justice, where they have no material gains, but are concerned for the future of mankind. Happiness, peace, for these are the qualities and the virtues that we want in society and which mankind is desperately in need of. And the fifth article of the nonviolent philosophy is, it avoids not only external physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. Mother Teresa of Calcutta thinks that we do not need guns and bombs to bring peace. We need love and compassion. He who resists non-violently, according to Luther, refuses not only to shoot his opponent, but equally refuses to hate him. Those fighting for liberation, in his view, those struggling for human dignity, the oppressed must not succumb to the temptation of becoming bitter or indulging in hate campaigns. internal ill disposition only breeds hatred and intensifies the gap between the oppressor and the oppressed. And the two then become victims of the thing that they, while one opposes physically, the other opposes spiritually, they all become victims. All of them, they become victims. One spiritually, the other physically. So they begin to hate each other, and that hate culminates only in much more hate, and of course in a devastation of human life. And the 6th article of the non-violent philosophy is, it is based on the conviction that the universe is on the side of justice. The non-violent resistor knows he has cosmic companionship. The whole universe, the whole world, the cosmos, everything that exists is on the side of justice and is on the side of the non-violent. He is not the only one involved in the struggle. The whole universe is with him. God himself is on the side of those who work for justice, because he works, in Martin Luther's view, to bring the disconnected aspects of reality into a harmonious whole. God works to bring everything into harmony, and there can be no harmony where there can be no harmony in the presence of war. Harmony only comes when there is peace, when there is love, when there is justice, when there is agreement between people, when there is conviviality among people. Violence, which we see everywhere today, is in Luther's mind not only impractical but immoral, and cannot be used as a means to any good whatsoever, for it always leaves behind bitterness, ruins. There is a poem written by Gurab Banerjee in celebration of non-violence and Mahatma Gandhi, which I love so much, and how I wish every Christian and every person in the world today could be able to take up this non-violent philosophy or way of life and live it out wherever they are, at their job site, in the family, as an individual, behind closed rooms and behind a closed parlor. If I'm able to take up the non-violent philosophy and live it out fully in my life, not wanting to harm or to kill or to hurt anybody, the society becomes a changed and a different place. And all the violence we see in the homes, all the violence we see in school and wherever we may be and where people are gathered, will totally be eradicated from the society, and mankind again will regain its humaneness, because man sees the other as his brother, as his sister, not hating the other either physically or spiritually. Here is the poem which I'd like to read out to you and to anybody who may want to listen to it, and which is a powerful and a great poem celebrating non-violence. And it says, "The time we are born is an age of warmongers, east to west, south to north. Throughout the world, there is not a single moment you can't hear about a war. It's a must in our daily life. Maybe in lieu of civil war, but it exists. None can disobey its presence, and where there is a war, there must be a weapon. And in the true sense, war can't be without weapon. There are so many varieties of this weapon, even maybe countless. But once a person made exception. Yes, he invented a sword, the sword of non-violence. Strange it seems to be, but it's fact. And we should proud of him, because he's an Indian. We all know him as Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, also renowned as Bapuji, father of nation. We celebrate his birth anniversary as a holiday, but did we even use his weapon once in our lifetime? Surely the answer will be no. But if we really respect him, we should do so, isn't it? Think of it. And last of all, I would like to conclude with, if he can, so we too. If he can, so we too. If he can, so we too. We can live out non-violently in our families and wherever we are, in memory and in celebration of the great Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who lived out non-violence in a way that the world today struggles to imitate. Nonviolence, it must be noted, is a great weapon in the hands of the oppressed for their deliverance and for their freedom, and which leaves them peaceful, without tension, without conflict, but satisfied at the end. And everyone is happy and there is peace, because it draws mankind to the table of understanding. It draws mankind to the table of brotherhood. It is not a weapon for the weak, but rather a weapon for the strong. And he who does not retaliate is not necessarily the one who is weak, but most often is the one who is stronger. Nonviolence is hard work. It is willingness to sacrifice. It is the patience to win. Those who employ it already have envisaged victory, which is summed up in reconciliation, in peace, in love, in universal brotherhood. As we go throughout this day, let us try to practice nonviolence and make it a way of life. Let us embrace it and show nonviolence to the people we meet, to the environment, and to the animals that daily we meet. And if we do, and if it becomes a way of life for us, then the society, the world will be a better place, and there will be a different world order and a different kind of revolution in the society that recognizes human dignity, ennobles the human being, and recognizes the somebodyness in our brothers and our sisters. Thank you very much. God bless you. God love you.